Testing 1, 2, 3.
Mic's on.
It's 3:30. Time to spool this thing up, call it to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Beautiful. Roll call. Clint Nelson is here. Steve McKesson.
I'm here.
Everybody got their mics on. Helene Brazier. Nope. Okay. Robert Marnett. Here. Meg Gaska.
Present.
Julie Johnson. She will be late by Zoom. Is that right?
She said she may be running late. If she doesn't make it, then she just got tied up in a meeting. So
Okay. All right. Alternate Tracy Largent.
Here.
Hey, Tracy.
What does that look like?
Hello.
Glad you're here. Okay, we'll get to the quorum business in a moment. Item 4. Instructions to allow public comment on agenda items from those attending this meeting via teleconference or video conference. If at any point anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment and have joined this meeting with their computer, they can click on the raise hand button located at the bottom of the screen. We will be alerted that they would like to speak. When called upon, please unmute the microphone and ask the question or make comments in no more than 3 minutes. Those who have joined by dialing a number on their telephone will need to press *6 to unmute themselves and then *9 to alert us they would like to speak. A slight pause will also be offered at the conclusion of each agenda item discussion to allow public members an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. Okay, seating of alternates. We have 4 members present, and I believe that constitutes a quorum,
Yes.
right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 of 6 is a quorum. So Tracy, we are glad you're here, but we do not need to seat you. And besides, I don't think we're taking any votes today, except on the minutes. I think today is information items. So that was item 5. Item 6, additions, deletions, amendments to the agenda. As always, we'll start with staff. Staff have any changes they want to make to the agenda?
Staff.
Nope. Any members of the committee have any changes?
Negative.
Hearing none, so ordered. Public comment on items relating, public comment relating to items not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public here? Does not look. like it.
Nope.
We currently do not.
Looks like it is just us chickens.
and we did not receive any written comments.
No written comments. Okay, thank you, Dawn. Item number 8, approval of minutes. All of you have received in your packets a copy of the minutes. They were kind of long because we had a fair amount of discussion last time. Are there any suggested additions, changes, or corrections to the minutes? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
So I will move to approve the minutes.
It's been moved
Well,
by,
I got unanimously voted down on something last week.
or
Well, if you got voted down, it wasn't unanimous.
Well, but
I-
approving that
I
the
mean-
minutes are correct.
I see.
I
That's
just
right.
wanted to remind people that I got unanimously voted down.
All I can say is this boy carries a resentment for a long time. You know that?
At least a month.
At
We know
least
that.
a month, yeah.
I'll second his emotion.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes, moved by Steve and seconded by Mig. I believe we can do this by voice vote.
Yes.
So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, we have 3 ayes and 1 abstention. Minutes are adopted. Beautiful. All right, item number 9, general manager comments. Tom, that's you all day.
Yeah, I guess the main thing now is the drastically changed water supply conditions in the state of California since 6 months ago. All the reservoirs that needed filling are full in the state. I mean, San Luis Reservoir, the big one on the road to Gilroy off the 5, was at about 25% full, and in December it's 100% full right now. And
So we're dumping water in the
we're
ocean.
dumping water left and right everywhere we can to keep it out. They're filling Diamond Valley. I don't know if it was that little news briefing there. And so we do anticipate a shift to state project water here. The governor has lifted all the different requirements that we be in level 2 and all that kind of stuff. It's all gone. And the state board is up their deliveries to 75% on the state water project, which was the threshold that Met had used. They said, if we're going to have allocations next year, unless we hit 75%. My guess is they'll hit 100%. I mean, they're flooding half the valley out there, and the snow hasn't even started to melt. And so there's going to be pretty severe flooding. With any luck, we'll see some movement by the state to build more off-stream storage this time around, but it didn't happen last time or the time before that or the time before that. So who knows? But it's positive news. On the water authority front, they're proposing a 14% rate increase. Obviously, we're going to do everything we can to knock that down. We talked about it a bit at the Budget and Finance Committee. It's unclear whether it's a stunt that they put out 14 because they really need 9.9 and everybody's going to be happy when they get down to 9.9, because in an unusual move, even though it's early in the process, they put out a press release with that number in it, before the board had even seen it. And then the city of San Diego, one of their reps in a prepared statement that I was reading during the board meeting 2 weeks ago, said the city won't accept anything in double digits. And I'm like, well, he's on the leadership. He must have known this was coming. So I don't want to say if with any luck, it'll only be a 9.9% increase. But the challenge is that they're forecasting sales at what I think is a more rational number at 360,000 acre feet, but they still have no plan on what to do when they get to 330, which is when we start paying for water we don't get. And that's going to be problematic. So hopefully we'll see some movement in that regard at the Water Authority. But as for now, everybody who's growing avocados can expect to have some sweeter water come to them. I haven't checked and see what the blend is right now, but once they shift to filling Diamond Valley, they'll likely slow down their Colorado supplies. Although they do have some concerns that with what's going on in Colorado, which isn't full, that if they leave it in Lake Mead, the feds are just going to take it and say, you can't have it now. And so there might be some posturing going on here that we still don't have any resolution.
Can't they store it upstream? Aren't there some reservoirs upstream of Lake Mead?
They're all controlled by the feds out there. And so, Met, if you don't take it, it goes to the next person in line. But if the feds step in through this whole process that they say they're going to make everybody take cuts, it's hard to see what's going to happen. And they've been threatening this for now 6-7 months. Oh no, we're in the 4th month of the year, so it's more like 8 months now, and still haven't pulled the trigger. But there is increased flows. They think they're going to be able to push 9 million acre feet down through the system this year, which is good. But there'll be a lot of pressure to use that to bolster the levels of the reservoirs downstream. But 1 year of good hydrology tends to kick a lot of cans down the road every time. And so we'll see.
Anything else?
That'll do.
I have a question. This is crazy. So
I like
just
crazy questions.
consider the source. It's about this whole storage issue. I have for years and years and years driven up and down the 5, so I get to see the aqueduct
Mhm.
at a number of locations. And even in wet years, the aqueduct seems to have many feet of concrete wall left above the water level. Has there ever been any thought of doing something that would allow them to store water in the aqueduct? I mean,
Yeah.
given the length of that puppy, you could probably store a lot of water. If you
Yeah,
went up 3 more feet. I don't know, just a
yeah, I don't
thought.
know. I mean, I know there's some challenges with some of the canals out there that the subsidence has caused some issues. There's some they're gonna have to raise because the ground is sunk so much. But I don't know. That's an interesting idea.
Well, if you ever have an opportunity to pass it on.
Next
pass it
time
on.
Gavin and I are,
Yeah,
having
right.
tea.
You guys just hang on it. Yep. Okay. Next item on the agenda, engineering and CIP program manager comments, Chad.
Only thing we have for the committee this month is just this atmospheric river after atmospheric river after atmospheric river. And it's obviously, we talked about at the previous committee meeting, rain delays to the jobs. It's affecting every project. We just had a progress meeting on the Rainbow Water Quality Improvement Project with the county, where we reminded not only the contractor, but the county also, because they have SDG&E, AT&T, all the other utilities that need to come in that are waiting on us to complete this. Even though you don't see it raining right now, it's not just one rain day for rain. It's like 3 to 4 rain days for 1 day's worth of rain. And then Robert, I think it was over the weekend, we received the email from the County of San Diego, an emergency sinkhole within the district affecting one of our water lines. So this is kind of taking us out of what we do day in and day out and just kind of focusing on stabilizing, slowing down when these contractors poke the hole in the ground. It's the groundwater's less than 4 feet. It's right there. And on Rainbow Water, they have failed paving on 2 different occasions so far. They can't meet compaction. It just starts pumping. And there's nothing they can do except take it all out and put all new back in. So we're working with all the contractors, but I would expect that there'll be some near end of contract negotiations taking place. So
Rising water table, is that an unforeseen field condition?
we're saying not right now. No.
Okay.
And nor is rain. We'll give a rain day, but it's not but that's what I'm talking about. I'm sure that there'll be some written correspondence heading our way where they will claim otherwise, that it was not foreseen in the bid docs at the time of bid, so on and so forth. And
we don't make any disclosures in our bid docs about rain or about water table or anything like that they have to assume.
Yeah, but for the
LS,
red
yeah,
project we did.
LS1 we did because we knew where that water table would be, but where it's rising higher, like in the Rainbow Valley, yeah, that wasn't in there.
Well, you can see the water squirting out of all the hills all around here.
Yeah. So
Squirting out of my front yard.
Yeah.
I
And you're on top of the
figure out
hill.
why.
Okay. Item 11, operations manager comments.
Freddie, can you bring up
Robert?
those pictures? So with the rains, as you can imagine, our wastewater system was severely impacted. Of course, you already heard this, I think, at the board meeting presentation I gave. This is a picture of lift station 2 at Old River and Little Gopher. This was the last rainstorm we had. It came in on a Tuesday night, hit us pretty hard, and then in the morning it hit us hard again. You can see how much the flooding impacted around that entire lift station. And Tom and I both agree this lift station wasn't put in a good spot. It was put too low, but this is what we had to deal with on these severe rains. It hasn't rained like this since 2019 was the last time we saw this lift station like this. You can see a pump. So you see a trailer, a truck, there's a trash mounted, we call it a trash pump, 6-inch trash pump right there. That's pumping wastewater out of the wet pit. And you can see how close the water was, probably about 10 feet away from spilling into that wet pit at that point from the flooding. So we were really close on having some really severe issues here. Go ahead, Freddie, next slide. This is a picture of the manholes in Moosa Creek.
That's not good.
This is what it looks like when the water comes out of Turner Lake out of Valley Center. And we actually are looped in on the cameras that Valley Center Water has. And there's a weir that shows the water as it's going into the lake. And then they also have an overflow for the lake and they have a camera on that. And we can look at those cameras, and when the weir disappears because there's so much water, we have a pretty good indication that this is what's going to happen downstream. Next slide. These are Baker tanks that we put up at lift station 2 because the wastewater was so much flow that we couldn't keep pumping it down North River Road. Each one of these tanks holds 21,000 gallons of fluid. So we are pumping with that trash pump into these tanks. And then we had tanker trucks come and they would suck the fluid out of these tanks and transport it down into Oceanside to Stallion and North River Road. And what happens when it rains like that, that water gets into our wastewater system and it essentially overwhelms the system. So we're just too much. And we call it I&I, infiltration and intrusion. And mostly because those pipes are clay pipes and they have cracks and holes in them and whatnot. And the groundwater, as Chad mentioned, the groundwater levels have come up. Now it's impacting our wastewater system.
Robert,
Yes, sir.
just a moment. Just want to interrupt to say, at 3:44, Helene has joined us via phone. So I just marked her present and want everybody to know Helene is with us. Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Keep going. Bro.
So
Welcome, Helene. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. I had trouble getting in.
So these were put in as a stopgap measure to kind of buy us more time at the lift station. And when we start taking these kind of drastic measures, we're having 5-6 staff members out there and we start doing 12-hour shifts. And this was it last week, 2 weeks ago, when that last atmospheric river hit us pretty hard. So when the first river came through the atmospheric river, the grounds weren't fully saturated yet. No impact. Second one came through, no impact. Third one came in, we're starting to feel it up until this last one hit us. And there was just nowhere for any of the water to go. Next slide.
So are those tanks just on site ready to use it, or do you have to bring them in?
So we brought them in from Rain for Rent. And this is, you can see the pump in the background and see these 2 hoses. Each one of those hoses goes to the tank. So we pump out of the wet well where the sewage normally is, and we're temporarily stored it in those tanks. And then those semi trucks come and they truck it all the way into Oceanside. And the reason for that is the line on North River Road was just too full. We just couldn't pump any more down that line. Next slide.
Robert,
Sir.
educate me. Why is our line down North River Road to Oceanside so full? Are we getting infiltration? Is that what's going on?
So if you remember
I
a
mean,
couple
are
of years ago,
people using more water when the rainstorm?
No. So a couple of years ago, we did that big project on North River Road where we went in, did spot repairs.
Yep.
Contractor did some, we did some, then we lined different
Yep,
sections. So we
right.
took care of.
And we did manholes to
and we
prevent
did- yep,
exfiltration,
We lined
right?
manholes, we
Yep.
replaced manhole rings and lids. So we took care of probably 95% of the I&I. What's happening is there's so much sewage and rainwater coming into this last lift station. We're trying to pump it out and get it to Oceanside as fast as possible. So when that happens, and when it's a hydraulic thing in the wet wells, the higher the wet well gets, we end up pumping more out, if that makes sense. So that wet well is constantly rising, and we've got the pumps going as fast as they can go to evacuate that water, which
Without spilling.
without spilling, and we're filling that pipe up. And we have sensors and manholes down North River Road, and we're filling those manholes up.
So-
with that.
What is it that's causing that much volume?
The rainwater
Coming
and
in
ground-
other places.
Infiltrate. Rainwater and
Oh,
groundwater.
It's a golf
All right.
course,
Yeah.
Everywhere else.
Okay, thank
all-
you.
Yeah.
all has to
That's,
go through
that's
there.
what I meant about educate me, because I couldn't figure out. I think of our sewer system as a closed system. It is not. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where the thoroughbred lift station will be so helpful.
Right.
Because that has
We have
330,000
Three-
storage
storage
tanks, yeah.
in there
Yep.
that we could
Yep.
hold it there as
Yep.
opposed to doing it here.
Right.
I do think though that at this lift station, which was only built about 10 or 12 years ago, sometime in the future, we should consider raising it. I mean, you don't have to raise all the pumps and everything. You just got to raise the concrete slab
Well,
and the electrical equipment up. But we'll see if some more developer money comes in, that'd be a good one to do, because it's not going to stop happening.
Yeah.
And this is every whenever we have these big wet years, we have a risk of spill there. And it's hairy because you can see, well, in the previous picture, you can see where the debris and the silt is, and anybody's been out there, you can see where it runs right through the parking lot there, and it's a couple inches away from going in there, and if that happens,
Yeah, we're
then
done.
you have a big spill, because we, obviously can't take that kind of.
This picture kind of gives you an idea where this is the driveway entrance into the lift station. It gives you an idea of the elevation difference from the road down. So you're going down into the lift station and you can see the water sheening over the
road.
asphalt apron right there.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
big berms, big speed bump like berms at each
Is
gate.
this the lift station that you took me to toward the end of our tour? The one where the parking, where it was just the most inappropriately located
Yeah.
place? I know we've made some improvements in space
Yeah,
management
we
there.
changed the
Right,
gate location
right,
to
right,
get
right.
in, but
But that's the one, right?
yeah,
okay,
it was also
right.
built with all the electrical gear, just with a little shade cover.
Right,
It has a
yep,
bullet
yep.
hole in it,
Mm.
and it's like, should have been in a building. So one of the ideas we kicked around is to, build a new building for all the electrical gear. The trick is you can't stop the flow to make this, move everything over. So it would probably be one of those things where you would just replace it and then one day hold the wastewater thoroughbred when it's there, and then rewire the pumps into the new motor control center. But I just want to slap the engineers who were involved.
Yeah.
Because if you walked out to that site, you go, this elevation seems too low.
Nothing makes sense. Next slide.
Yeah,
The pipe from there on to Oceanside, it's impractical to make it bigger.
Yeah, it's really expensive. Is that Old River?
It's real deep,
North River
right?
Road, it's
As I
deep
remember.
and
Yeah.
it's problematic.
Yeah, real.
We looked at the price of that,
Very
it's huge. And so it was in the 10 to 15 million dollars to upsize that pipe. And what we'd always figured out is that rather than do that, if we can have an equalization tank somewhere in the system, which Thoroughbred is, then we can hold those, because the peak doesn't last forever.
Right,
It's just,
manage
we're
your
getting
flow.
it.
Just manage.
We
your
just
flow.
got to equalize the flow so that we can pump at a constant rate. We were in the middle of design of a larger pipe when I got hired here, and I'm like, well, we don't have that kind of dough. What are you talking about? And so,
Picture of our lower yard.
yeah, that was the same day, wasn't it?
Well, it sounds like a few tanks are a lot cheaper than a pipe then.
That is a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
It's, we were going to have one anyway. We just made it bigger.
The other
Here-
That's
possibility,
the lower yard here.
Yeah, here.
the other possibility is that if we're able to do a pure water,
Right.
that reduces the flow. We'll be taking it and repurposing it.
Right.
Right.
That reduces the flow going down Oceanside.
Right.
So that's a
Yeah, if we had our own
cost
plant here. yeah.
avoidance that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you're wondering, this is a really good visual, the impact the rain had. So this is our lower lot down here where we store all of our pipe. Normally that's dry.
We're in a riverbed. What do
Yeah.
you expect?
Next
Yeah.
slide.
Well, before we go to the next slide, this does not give me a warm and fuzzy feeling about houses there.
Well, the river didn't come over the banks. That's just so much rain. At the
It
end
just-
there,
Yeah, yeah.
and the ground was saturated.
Yeah.
So
There's nowhere to go.
Drainage. from
yeah,
it.
there's no
There's
drainage. from it.
drainage.
There's actually a berm against the river.
Right.
If you go out there.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's the.
yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
so it artificially held the
All right.
Yeah.
water.
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you were gonna put houses there, it needs to come up a couple feet.
Right.
Come up, storm drain. all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Well, but, and the installation of community drainage makes a huge difference.
Right,
Got it. Thank you.
Next slide, Brittany. So this is the tanker trucks lined up on North River Road at Stallion. So they pull up to where that yellow tanker truck is. There's a manhole right there. They drop their hose in there and drop their load. What we do is we notify Oceanside, because this is actually in the city of Oceanside. So we notify them when we're going to do these tanker operations. And then the next day we send them how many gallons we transferred. And since January, we've transferred just over 600,000 gallons of sewage via these trucks.
Does that affect our bill?
No, it
Not big as far as volumetrically,
It-
we're doing 800, 900,000 gallons a day. So it does, but over 3-4 months.
yeah.
And where is this
This
business?
Stallion and North River Road.
Okay, all right.
Next slide. So just an idea what that tanker truck looks like. Just basically a long tube on a truck, and these trucks can hold about 6,000 gallons.
At that point there at Stallion and North, is there a bigger pipe at that
It
location?
transitions to Oceanside's 21 inch. So
Oh,
our
okay.
15 transitions
Yeah.
to their 21 inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that particular spot You can't really do it on North River Road anywhere else from Stallion going back to Highway 76 because you would take up the whole road. So that's the first manhole when you get past the bend and you're actually in the center suicide lane where it's safe enough to cone them off and everything. Yeah, works perfect.
But when we finish the Thoroughbred lift station, this problem won't ceases to
Right. Next slide.
exist.
That might be it.
The
Yeah, that's it.
The elevation of the lift
Yeah.
station itself is still a problem. but-
So with Thoroughbred in place, with that extra storage, what we can do is turn the pumps down and let all that flow. Remember those first two blue tanks I showed you hold total 41,000 gallons. The emergency storage is over 300,000 gallons. So now what we do is we stack all that into that emergency storage and we just let that flow come out at whatever rate we choose. So let's say 800 GPM and it goes down to this last lift station, it gets there, then we can just hold a little bit more there and maybe only pump 600 GPM at a time. So it gives us a lot more control. Right now, it just freight trains and slams right into lift station 2 and we've got to do something with it. The other options that we have is we had to shut down Horse Creek lift station. So now we're backing flows up in there. Eventually, we've got to release that. And that's a whole nother problem that we have to deal with. So for a couple of days there, it got a little bit dicey for everybody. Some long hours. It's not fun being out there in the rain. But this is what we
Are we
do.
over the hump now?
I think we're over the hump. We had a few alarms on North River Road. So the sensors that I was talking about, but the level in those manholes is going down. So now it's that groundwater's not impacting the system like it was. And even today I was looking at some of the trends and it looks like we're starting to come out of it. But we haven't had the need to have guys out there since not last week and the weekend before.
Can you determine based on the sensors which lines, which laterals or main trunk lines have the highest incidence of water intrusion?
So we have 33, we call them smart cover alarms. Basically a device that hangs down from the manhole and it measures flow, but it also measures how high that wastewater is rising in the manhole. And yes, where we have positioned them, we can backtrack. And we do. When the first rain started hitting us, we started backtracking. And the Caltrans lot across the street, we were getting more than normal flows coming from that direction. So we started you pop open manholes and look in to see, well, okay, where is the heavy flow? You're tracing it back. And we found there's an old stub out for that lot. And a bunch of water was coming through that stub out. So we went in there and put a mechanical plug in there and plugged that. So when we start getting different, a lot more flow than normal, we'll start going out and lifting up manholes and trying to see if we can backtrack it. So we did it on Little Gopher Canyon. We said, okay, well, maybe Bonzel Oaks, that development, something weird's going on. They're not connected to our sewer, but who knows what shenanigans may be going on a construction site. So you start popping manholes and checking and see, and it's real obvious because you'll see dirty water. Usually the water's kind of clean and it has other things in it
Goldfish.
other than dirt. But then when you see the stream of looking like muddy water, you're like, okay, that's coming from somewhere. But then you start backtracking it. And that's kind of a common occurrence. We'll start looking. We've had instances where people have lifted up manhole lids to let areas drain. Yeah.
Oh, just open up the drain. Okay.
Open up,
it's
pull the
golf
lid and
course.
let that water go right in there. Golf courses are notorious for that.
Yeah, there's a couple of key areas like Robert showed you the images of the manholes that are in creek beds. I mean, those are the places where the groundwater level is not
Yeah.
just below ground, it's
Yeah.
above ground. We have that over here by the old model airplane field with the new development. We'll take those lines out. And so there's a couple of key spots, but I think as we talked about in the Budget and Finance Committee on the sewer CIP side in the near term, those sorts of I&I control measures are going to be important. Obviously, if we have space to store it at Thoroughbred, it takes away the emergency, but we don't want to pay to treat that stuff either. And so going through a system to where we're lining, in situ lining some of these old vitrified clay pipes or doing more manhole rehabilitations and pinning that down. I think that another round of some smoke testing would be appropriate in certain areas because you do find there are places that have either residences or others that have diverted storm drainage into the sewer system because their gardener is going to go put a patio in, they get a drain, they found a drain, they connect to it. They don't think that, hey, you can't connect to that one. That's sewer.
Mhm.
So, so you'll find that kind of stuff. It's a death by 1,000 pinpricks, those, because it's not just usually one. It's getting to the horse track, the racetrack over there every now and then lets loose with some. When they get in some issues, and they'll pop a manhole, you know.
They're one of our first spots we go check.
Yeah.
And we start having issues.
That and the golf course. Huh?
All the golf courses, Vista Valley, Palamesa. Oh yeah. Whole routine. But yeah, so we're coming out of it. Thoroughbred's going to have a really good positive impact on our system. So excited to see that done. Wish it was done already.
Yeah.
Can't get done soon enough. Chad.
Supply chain.
Used to be COVID.
Man, he was quick with that one. So I'll defer the rest of my comments when we get to the next item, talking about the meters.
Okay. Any questions for Robert? We all done? We'll move on to item 12, committee member comments. Helene, I'll go around the horn. Helene, you have any comments?
I have one brief comment. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the comments you made at the last board meeting about this committee's discussion about furthering our investment in outside help, shall we say. Thank you.
You're welcome. I did not prevail, as you well know.
I understand that. And the opinion in the district has not prevailed either, because I've been getting calls left and right by people who don't want us to outsource our district, which they think we're doing.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg, you got any comments?
We can revisit periodically,
Yes.
make sure. So I wanted to check and formally on whether Director Patricia Townsend Smith has attended any of the engineering meetings.
No, the answer is no. She was appointed by the board to the Finance Committee, and she has not attended any of those meetings either.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is when she ran, she said she had ideas of getting cleaner water based on different projects. And I know she's gone and gone on to the Budget and Finance Committee, but I don't see how you could come up with any idea of what kind of projects you might suggest unless you have an understanding of what's being done by engineering. And so I just wanted to check that. So thank you. I guess the other questions I've got have to do with I think what's probably on the agenda. So I'll just hold off until we get to those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert, got anything?
My only comment was when I went through the minutes, and we had the big, long discussion about working in-house, working out of house. But there was a concept employed that PEs sit around and do AutoCAD. I don't know any PEs that even know AutoCAD. Let's draft people do that. So my feeling was if you hire a PA, he can do all the engineering, but he can also go and do exactly the project management if he's a good one that Chad's doing. So I don't think it's make work to pick up a PE. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Steve?
No further comment on that.
Well,
We're in an engineering committee meeting, not a business committee meeting.
That's true.
having had ventilation of that particular issue, I do have a comment, and it is not about any of the above. It is, once again, educate me. So it may be misguided, but for some reason, I thought that digging the big hole at Thoroughbred had been basically done, and we were doing finishing touches. And yet I still see a big clamshell doing stuff out there. It's bigger than a backhoe, so I'm guessing it's a clamshell. And then I notice a few hundred yards to the north, there seems to be some other digging going on, which I was guessing is pipeline work. I'm just guessing. And then there seems to be some digging going on to the south of Thoroughbred. So I'm not critical. I'm just curious. Help me, just kind of give me the shot.
There are probably 3 or 4 headings right now.
Okay.
So the actual wet well is done. It's coated. It's done. There's that excavation you're seeing is not for the wet well. But yeah, they are still working on, we just finished some casings. So there's a receiving and help me out on the technical terms. You got the launch and the receiving pits. So that's what you're seeing there for some casings. And then, yeah, pipeline work going on where it's not linear from start at the movie theater, go to Thoroughbred, continue. There are some intricacies to bounce around. So that's why you're seeing those headings. We're also working over on Old River Road in front of the school with some restricted work hours. And those areas will be switching to nights here soon. So they're all over while that's all going, you'll start seeing some work on the bridge when material starts arriving. So all kinds of different headings going on.
Okay. And obviously I have no qualms with multiple headings.
Yep.
In fact, go.
Exactly.
Push the button.
Yep.
I just was curious. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, if you go out, there's a lot.
Do we have the lid on the tank?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's fully,
Buried.
that is
Okay.
done.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. I just haven't been over to
We
look.
just can't flow influent into it yet.
All right.
That's what's
Thank you.
coming.
Because
Thank
we
you
don't have
very
anything to
much.
get it out.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Item 13, board action updates.
I didn't bring, did I bring my stuff? I did.
I
Well, I
think
know we talked about the one we've already talked
Yes, we
about.
did.
I think everybody's clear on what happened there.
the one that we've agreed we shall not speak of this again.
Well, we'll
Right.
visit it another time.
Okay, I know that we passed the Montserrat winery closeout,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And we passed the consultancy thing,
Correct. And
I
then
don't-
the 2 presentations were deferred
right?
because the rate model
Right.
went so long.
And those are not the subject of this committee's work anyway. So I think those 2 items were the only
Correct.
Yeah.
items that came from the committee. So both of those were passed.
Correct.
So that's board action updates. Okay,
I had to find my paper and you did it off memory.
I do not have Alzheimer's, but I do have sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right. Okay. Um,
Sometimes.
Item number 14, San Luis Rey groundwater study update. And Tom, it looks like you're gonna do that.
Yeah, I will. The study is still ongoing, so we don't have the full report yet. But there is some preliminary work that has been completed. The hydrogeologists have done the bulk of their work in looking at the previous modeling that was done and looking at, the West Yo study. And then they also combine it with a bunch of work they've done in this San Luis Rey Valley. These same guys are the ones who did the work for Oceanside in the Mission Basin, but also in the Palma Valley. So they've got the whole San Luis Rey pretty well mapped out. Part of it was to look at what are the appropriate yields that under imported return flow that they felt that we could get back out, mainly from septic flows, although some from agricultural irrigation, the seepage. I've asked them to use mainly the septic flows, just because we know that in a project like this, it might take 10 years to get built. 10 years from now, the agricultural, if we bank on the same flows we have today, we might be looking at like 10 years ago, we had 10,000 acre feet more agricultural flows than we do today. We don't know what those are going to be like in the future. So to be conservative, you want to see if you can base load a project based on flows that we know will be there forever. Essentially septic flows, as long as people live there, as opposed to, there's 8,000 acres of avocado. And when we plan the project, by the time we do it, there is 3,000 acres of avocado, and all that water that we would have rights to recover is no longer there. And so they went through and also looked at, as these 2 charts show, different areas along the river. On the picture to the left, it shows some of the private wells that are out there, a number of which are in the groundwater basin. The groundwater basin is in this yellow in here, all these little stuff here. That's the actual groundwater basin here.
And how are the wells noted? Are they the little blue dots?
Blue dots. There's
Okay.
lots of wells. A lot of them are small.
Yeah.
Residential wells. There are some larger ones, like the Vessels Ranch has a big well over there. Some of the golf courses have them. Some of them have the proper permits, some don't. Some people get a permit for the county, but don't ever get their rights looked at by the state. But one of the things we have to look at is that if we're going to start extracting, if we're very near someone else's well, that causes problem because this is not a deep aquifer and you can suck it dry and make the other guy's well less functional and therefore find yourself in a little bit of trouble. Now, if some of those other wells don't have the appropriate extraction and diversion permits, then then that's their problem. But they did get the county data on all the wells, and there's lots of wells in our service area. I'm sure everybody here knows somebody who's got a well. Bob tried to have one too, didn't you? At one point.
Well, the guy that owned before me,
Yeah.
they spent 2 or 3 weeks digging and, but I still don't know why they stopped.
Yeah.
It must have hit hard rock.
China. But and so the image on the right, they have a GIS tool where they take a number of factors that looks at the site suitability, to look at proximity to other things, what the groundwater hydrogeology looks like and things like that. And so the areas in green are better locations. Also has to do with, we preferentially had it on district owned land or land that we can acquire either another public agency or something, not Caltrans. Although we do have some Caltrans land in some of these options. And so that one on the right shows the areas in red being less desirable and the areas in green being more desirable for putting well fields. Now, until we get some pump testing done and some additional work on specific locations, we don't know how many wells it's going to take to produce a given yield. If you're trying to get 7,000 acre feet, which they think from Valley Center, Fallbrook and Rainbow combined into this thing, we could probably justify up to 7,000 acre feet. But there's not a lot of confidence we can extract 7,000 acre feet, because it's just not that much. I mean, it replenishes pretty quickly, but it's just.
When you say Valley Center, why do you say Valley Center?
Because you see that chart on the left, that's the watershed.
Your cursor so people.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You can also see.
Okay, and the chart on the left, this is the whole watershed. This goes all the way up in Valley Center. So Moosa Creek, the one that Robert was talking
Right.
about, and
Okay.
Lake Turner and whatnot are way out here. That's part of Valley Center, and parts of the other parts of this are in Fallbrook service area. So they look at it not from our district boundary, but from the watershed analysis. That anything that gets injected into the ground here eventually, and how long it takes is, could be a long time, will end up in that groundwater basin hydrogeologically. They're all connected.
And all the little blue dots on the image on the left are wells, right?
Wells, yeah,
Yeah.
private wells. And so those are factors. And then so here on the right, there are certain areas where, wow, this thing's really, right in this areas, which I believe that's down near the Vessels Ranch and things like that, but it probably correlates with there being a bunch of wells in that area. But they identified a couple different locations here that would be more suitable than otherwise. Some of which way down here, actually in some land owned by the city of Oceanside over by North River Road, farther to the west. One of the challenges here is the farther west you go, the higher the salinity gets. And they've got, and we didn't bring a chart of it, but it does show. And
Orient me. In the image on the right,
I-15.
what is the red,
Yeah.
the red line? What
That's
is it?
I-15, the
That's
purple one,
I-15.
I-15, and then Highway 76 coming this way.
Okay.
So,
All right.
and then our district boundary up here.
Right.
And so,
So we're not looking very far east of I-15, presumably mainly because of brine.
well, east is better because of Bryant. It's
East?
just not in our service area at this point. It's in San Luis area, MWD.
Oh,
But when we looked at it, unless you could basically get onto the Pala Reservation, you're going to have a brine management component to this project. And in that scenario, looking at how to deal with it, then you've got to get rid of the brine, right? Now, we do have capacity rights in the ocean outfall from the San Luis Rey plant down way down there. But the farther you got to move that stuff, the economics starts getting really bad. Now, we don't have the full economic report yet. All this stuff's going to be coming in over the next 2 months, where they're scheduled to be done in June with this, right? And so, so one of the overarching things is like, okay, if we could get far enough east to where we get sweet water and not have to desalinate, that's the greatest option. But they saw some numbers in the 600s from some well data they got from people. There's a lot of people don't want to give up their water quality data. The tribes, I talked to their attorney since they're in the fight with all the folks, lawsuits with the folks in Palm Valley. They're like, hey, we're not giving out any information at this point. And I understand that. And they say it's not you guys. It's just that at this particular juncture, it's not appropriate for us to be sharing any information.
Close to the vest.
Yep, and I get that. But we were hoping to see lower TDS like closer here by 15 and 76 in this, but it isn't. It's still too high.
So at the macro level, the working hypothesis is the farther east we go, the less sodium we get in the water, but the volumetric is not nearly as great as the further west we go because we get more of that water captured and brought down, but it's uglier water. Is that
It it depends on time of year, what year you're in, but generally yes, but it's also the basin itself has different capacities and its width, because part of it gets very narrow. You get down by where the old Bonsall Bridge is, and like it tightens up right there. And so then there's just less to pull from. And so you can, the wider it is, if it's all the same depth, if you're pulling out of a larger volume underground, then you're going to draw down less and you can pull more out and it recharges faster. So it really got to factor all those things in, although this also does get influenced by the discharges coming out of the Valley Center plant at Moosa Creek. The Valley Center has a wastewater treatment plant over by the Castle Creek Golf Course. If you ever drive up there, they're on the right-hand side of the road, you go up there and it has percolation ponds right near where the aqueduct crosses Camino del Rey, where they're putting hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day in, and it goes underground. And of course, Moody Creek Vineyards pumps a bunch of it out and waters their grapes with it. But that adds to, I think, one of the reasons that it gets more green down here, because there's additional flows. Does get to a more constrained basin, but they have identified a couple potential sites that they think are worth looking at. One being our offices here, but another one farther to the west. And the reason farther west, one of the concepts they're putting out here is, rather than us building our own desalter plant, Oceanside has Mission Desalter. They're in the feasibility study right now to expand it for future, to where we could say, hey, we'll jump on that. And then the brine, we don't do the brine. We just send it to a transmission main to collect all this raw water and send it down there and get the economy of scale of a larger plant. We had a meeting with them last week where the engineering team with Hoke laid out some positives for the city of Oceanside, related to their treatment trains, and how if they could get more of this groundwater in there, they could divert, have less impact on their RO systems and on their green sand filters. It was a very technical argument on how additional flows could help the plant run better, but it would take additional capital investment, obviously, on our part to do so.
Next slide.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, wait, before you leave that,
Okay.
because it has all those wells, I've always said we should know the sites of every single well in our district that has pre-1914 rights.
We have those. yeah.
Okay, and we have that information?
Yeah.
Because if ever any one of those become available, we need to move to pick that up.
Yeah, we did some initial research on some of these pre-1914 rights, like the Vessels, which is nearby, and its riparian rights. And those, and Alfred is working on a legal theory, those can only be used on the land in which they're located.
Mhm.
Now, he did cite a particular case law, and there might be a process, especially in a series of a water shortage, that if we were to work with them to acquire those rights, they get the state board to convert them. To say that these guys have been active pumping since 1895, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But we want to use it municipally. Can we get these rights changed? There's not a lot of precedent for that. But I also found that we did some digging and found the old documents, the Pankeys are also riparian rights. And so they become more difficult to use for municipal use, but not impossible. It's going to take a different process. But certainly we want to make sure that if we can get those additional rights, and that's one of the options they're looking at. We said, hey, we'll just plan it in case.
Yeah.
And so on the next slide, so this one, the three different alternatives. One, the city of Oceanside parcels, and there's two different city of Oceanside parcels where, and the other one, the city of Oceanside, I think the mid parcel is not the city of Oceanside, because that's over near Mission Road and 76. So it's or GERD. So I think it's just mislabeled there. But they're looking at 3,200 acre feet. That's not without our additional, without rights. Then another thing we have with them, it goes up to about 5,500 acre feet. And so if you can acquire those rights, if you can pump it out. Now, we haven't validated, they believe these will accommodate this amount of yield. And 3,200 acre feet a year is good. I mean, I think that's in the range. If you get down under 2,500, I don't know that it'll pencil to build a plant. But if all we're doing is building extraction wells and partnering on a larger plant, the cost per unit goes down. And especially when the water authority going up 14%, it starts to get economically feasible pretty quickly. So we did have a meeting with the city of Oceanside. It's the first they've heard of it, but they're in and their timing is still out there a ways. I pitched to them that, you know, hey, if we come in and partner on this and you have a regional facility, you go up a ladder or two in the grant funding category.
Yep.
Because you're working on a regional facility to improve things. And then, you know, brine disposal is not a big deal because we are doing capacity. Boom, it goes out to the ocean right there. And so there's a lot of benefits to that. Obviously, we lose a certain amount of independence on it, but we're already partners with them on wastewater, you know, right in there. The Mission Desalter is not too far from the wastewater plant over there in Oceanside. There are, you know, some constraints on their sizing, and then, you know, they hadn't heard of this before, so it was their first hearing of it. So they're like, no. And sometimes when you get an organization that's got their project in mind, you come in and say, hey, can I piggyback on that project? You get a little resistance. But Lindsay's you know, all about partnering with us on different stuff where it makes sense for them, and we're going to work on it to help them understand how this might work well for them. But this was just last Monday, was it?
It was a week and a half ago.
Yeah, last Monday we met with them. So that was just the first meeting. We're going to follow up with them with additional information. And, you know, we still don't have the full data from Hoke. You know, some of the information he was given in that meeting was the first time we had seen it, because it's all being done here right in real time. And so in this situation, if you are going to the west to there, then you pick the alternative to Oceanside because the less pipe, right? You cut out 4 or 5 miles of pipe. That's a lot of money. And so you want to get the shortest amount of pipe possible to convey the water. Whether or not those parcels at that narrow part of the riverbed can reliably produce the yield we need, that's the next level they've got to go in. And they kind of said, all right, where do we want to look? Here's all these factors we want to consider. And there's a whole long list of them. And they gave them different weightings. And then they came up with, hey, look in these areas. And then it really depends. If we were to build our own plant, I mean, in any case, we got to go there with brine, right? And so there's going to be a pipeline going down there, but it might be a 6-inch pipe as opposed to an 18-inch pipeline. And so those are kind of where we're at right now. We're waiting on some of the economic analysis, which will give us some dollars to say alternative 1, pipe cost is X, alternative 2 is pipe cost is X divided by 2 or whatever. So we don't have that information yet. We're expecting that here later this month, I think. I don't know,
Amanda's on.
Amanda online. When are we expecting the economic analysis on this, Amanda? You know?
Do 1 second.
She's gonna look it up. And so, but the good thing is they say, yeah, you know, they took some exception to some of the ways West Yost had done it, which we've had other people give us those same comments. So they basically redid it and did it in a way they believe is much more justifiable. But with the combination of the two, you know, you're like, we're going to be able to most certainly assert the right to extract this water. And then the question becomes, can we do it cost effectively and where? Right.
Yes. And that goes hand in hand. So first step will be getting the description of the alternatives nailed out. So our consultants are working with SDG&E, City of Oceanside, as Tom had mentioned. So we're looking to get alternative descriptions end of this month. And then the economic analysis will follow come May 3rd.
May 3rd. Okay. So then we'll have a lot more to share. And obviously it's early days, but you know, this is one of the stopping points that we had talked about on this. Like if we came up to this and they said, yeah, you're going to get 1,500 acre feet, we'd say, forget it.
That's the off ramp.
That was an off. So this is like, of course, I did make a couple of jokes during some of these meetings that, you know, most consultants, when they know there's an off ramp, certainly don't come up with that result to get themselves out of a job. not to.
Well, that's what professional liability insurance is for.
That's
Right.
Sorry.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
And-
Errors and omissions, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and this sort of feasibility study, but this study is also necessary for us to take the Bureau of Reclamation to start getting the grant
Yeah.
applications going, and that's
Yeah.
something that
And those grants would be to support development of test wells or?
there's planning and then construction grants out there, but you
Yeah.
have to have a feasibility study. So
Right.
for the planning grants, so Amelia's waiting for this stuff so she can get in there. We already met with Jack Symes and with USBR, and so they're aware this is
Okay.
coming, but they don't start talking to you until you've completed a feasibility study.
Right.
Of some sort. That's a
Right.
box that's got to be checked.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we are. I think it's it's a positive result. We were hoping that we would have this sort of results. And then if we can acquire different rights, or we can work it out, Valley Center or Fallbrook may say, and Fallbrook's very small, but Valley Center is considerable amount. Yeah, you can use our rights, and we can license their rights in some way. And then they can have some of the yield from it, but just making it larger drives cost down, right? Because it's just, the capital cost. If I got to build a pipeline that's 12-inch to carry all this water down to Oceanside, but if I make it 16 inches, carry theirs too, the marginal cost of that is low. Because it's pipe cost as opposed to digging and everything else.
Educate me again. Valley Center is way out there.
Mhm.
The sites we're looking at are way over there. If we're gonna treat way over to the west, we're gonna pump back uphill to get water
We
to
would-
Valley Center, or would we just wheel water? What's
Yeah,
the-
it would be done in lieu in different ways.
Okay.
And so, like even with Oceanside, we would take it from the Weiss plant. Well, Valley Center's got a connection, pipelines, we can interconnect with Valley Center. There's a couple spots. Because they do, one of their water authority connections is right there on Gopher Canyon Road. When you're coming to the west from the 15 on the right, the
Mhm.
brick structure, that's Valley Center's turnout. So they've got infrastructure to where we could get water to them. All those details have to be worked
Okay,
out.
I got
but,
it. I got it.
It
I
could
got
also
it.
be done through some sort of between Oceanside and Valley Center with the water authority connections, that they say, hey,
Yeah.
give them this water, we're going to keep this water. And, rather than them taking water from the water authority connection, they get it to Valley Center, and it's just,
It's an exchange.
it's all connected in some way or another.
And I was reading the scope of work yesterday that we approved for them. So they have done all of the fine tuning and updating of both of those models that they were concerned about.
Yeah, the geoscience
the-
work is complete to this point. Now, the specific site design and site
Right.
analysis, exact, because then they're also going to want to, in the next phase, get some test pumps out there and validate that what they think that was going to happen in the model is what happens.
Now, these three alternatives, these are the alternatives that were referenced in the scope of work where they were to identify alternatives for us to be analyzed. Are these those alternatives?
I don't think these are those alternatives. These are just the three sites that they felt met the criteria from the GIS site selection tool.
Mhm.
And maybe Amanda can explain it better than I, but that they felt that these are the most likely, and that, you would choose different, if you had different criteria, then they would produce different results. But when we look at the alternate of if Oceanside plays ball, now they may not, they may say, forget you guys, but I think there's a credible argument. We show them, hey, you're going to be expanding your plant. We can come over and pay for 33% of the capital works you need to do, the basic civil works and all the other stuff, and then trains and help you get more grant money. I don't know why they wouldn't. It seems business sense to me that if, water treatment plants are kind of like widget factories that, the more units you can crank out with the same capital, the more money you make. And so whenever you can make a plant bigger, it makes it cheaper per acre foot. And so it's an incentive for them.
The reason I asked the question if those were the alternatives is I noticed that the projected number of acre feet is exactly the same for each of the three alternatives. And that just made me curious.
Well, this is what they think is a conservative number that their hydraulic model says that we can get out of the basin. Now, can we get all 3,200 acre feet out of the Oceanside parcels alternative 2? That's unclear. So they've got to then go model how many wells will that take? You can't take one. You're not going to get out of one well because you just Be done and turn on and 6 hours later, it's not
Right.
pump anymore. So now they've got to see what's it going to take, and it may end up taking in multiple locations.
So in essence, the 3227 for all three alternatives is at this point is just a plug number?
Plug number
Okay.
based on the outcome of the model. So, I
Okay.
mean, it could be that we're going to have wells sited all along the river that go into larger and larger pipeline as you go. The really good thing about siting wells is it's so much simpler as far as a footprint on the easements you need and the space you need. I mean, well sites can be way smaller than this room.
Right.
You know, you
Yeah.
see well sites. I mean, you could put it in the size of this table and that's all you need, right? As long as you get power, drill a well, enough room to back a drill rig up and. there you go.
But you got to manage them because you got to make sure there's no encroachment.
Right.
We ran into that problem in Running Springs where the general manager we had at the time did not perform due diligence and he allowed development and we lost some of our wells.
Oh, that's.
So,
not bad.
yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, yeah, you know, obviously, like any right away, you've got to,
Yeah.
you know, manage it, protect it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is promising because I mean, if you just get to 3,000, you know, what we've been using about
We're about-
14,000.
Yeah, well,
acre
this year is
feet,
gonna be
That's
13.
That's a
20,
25%.
25%.
Yeah, quarter
I
of.
mean,
And if we can bolster that with a little extra from other rights, if we can
And-
get.
yeah,
and as
but
they-
Can we pull it out?
And as they do their cost effectiveness analysis, they will not only look at the price of water as we perceive it now to be paid, but also with escalators, but they would also look at it from the eastern
Yeah,
municipal so that we have
Right.
both options.
yeah, obviously,
in
if
front
it's
of us.
Eastern, it gets, the
Right.
ROI is worse, but
Right.
that's better.
But you
You
know,
Yeah.
it's
But
it's
having-
good, but bad.
Yeah.
but having indigenous water, it to me is it's not non-economic, but I would think, I would hope that the district would make a decision on that. Not regardless of the economics, but I
Well,
think there is a huge benefit to
here's
having
where
it.
it's important. Couple weeks back, I went up to Sacramento for that legislative symposium, okay? And one of the things they talked about was there's these different laws that are out there that allow you to get permits. And if you have the rights and are able to take water and you have the permit ready and there's these atmospheric flows, rivers, and now there's the surge way beyond what's normal. If you have the permit, you can take that excess. But for one, you need to have the ability to take.
Right.
Two, you have to have the permits in place. What they were saying was there was tons of people that were staring at the water go by. They had not gone through the process and gotten their permits in place. So it's one mandatory that we have some capability to draw. Who cares if it's
Mhm.
1 acre foot?
Right.
If there's that opportunity and you can draw that excess and nobody else around has that permit and that ability,
Free water.
it's free water and the
There's
more
plenty
we
of it
can
out there
take.
right now.
Yeah. The more we can take, the better off we're going to be for our ratepayers.
Yeah, we'll likely be constrained by the treatment capacity in the plant.
Right.
And then places to put it.
Yeah, well, yeah,
But
sure.
I think,
But if we can transfer,
Yeah.
if we captured it and we have an agreement
We can
with
wheel
Valley
it.
Center,
we can wheel it.
we can wheel
Oh,
it.
that opens up a lot of options.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think Mig's point just it upgrades the notion that doing this goes beyond pure economic feasibility. And
Yeah,
30 years from now, having 25% of your water be indigenous is a big deal.
well, in
I
30
think
years, it won't be 25, it'll probably be 50.
so. Right. Well,
Yeah.
If the trend keeps going.
Yeah, right.
you
Yeah,
get what I'm
Here's the
saying,
budget.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's, I don't want to say it's a non-economic.
Yeah.
analysis.
And if we get hosed and we get stuck in County Water Authority, everything we can produce ourselves
Yeah, oh, I mean,
at 14% a year.
when we were doing this, when I first got hired here, they were looking at $1,200 an acre for it to treat it. They're like, or 1,600, I think. They're like, yeah, Water Authority is only about 1,200. Well, now Water Authority is going to be 2,200. And
Yeah.
so it's but like anything else, everything gets more expensive. But I think that I will say, and if any from Hoke is listening, I don't think they handled us as a client very well as far as prepping us for the meeting we had last week, because some of it was news to me. The concept of partnering with the city has some tangible upsides for both parties, I think. And if it doesn't work out, then we should, like Mick said, then forget it. But we got to deal with the brine. The brine is always the thing that kills these
Mhm.
things. And there are, you can do thermal disposal and try to break it down farther, but it gets very energy intensive and, it's
Got it.
problematic.
So would it be clear to say that we have come up with what appears to be some alternatives that are bracketed around a very good number in terms of yield? That the next major milestone date is in early May, and the project, the phase completion date is sometime in June. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
And we are, as best we know, we are on schedule to get
Let's just
that.
say we're not getting a lot of information early, but they are just meeting the numbers, the dates.
Yeah, Amanda, anything to add on
You
that?
gotta squeeze that.
Ye-
through, you know,
Yes,
you
if,
just gotta-
if I could. So, for the, as it relates to the board action that we approved for approving the feasibility study, which was task 1, they are meeting all of their proposed schedule deadlines. We're about 50% build out. The consultants and sub-consultants have been doing quite a bit of extensive work with investigating both private wells, developing the site suitability tool analysis. They're coming up with some decent options for us. There's still quite a bit of legwork to go, as Tom alluded to, with partnering with local stakeholders and developing both the economic analysis and also the cost to construct a final facility. But I think as more information comes in, it'll help the district outline a path forward on whether or not we're going to proceed with an option, and then also gear us up for potential grant funding opportunities as well.
Good. Good. Are there any further questions or comments? I would like to thank Chad and Amanda. Whoops.
Does Helene have one?
Hello?
No, thank you.
I just want to thank Chad and Amanda for the work you're putting in on this. This is a little bit of a quiet project, and we don't hear much about it because there was such a long lead time in the scope. And so I really appreciate the update and I feel a little uplifted and optimistic based on what we heard today. So that's good. So
And
thank
this
you.
is, we've
Thank
only
you
got the
both.
information in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
No, I think this is very important to the life of the district. Yeah.
Okay, then I think we will move on to item number 15. Headquarters update, and Tom, it looks like you've got the spotlight again.
Yeah, and I wish I had better news on this, but last month, or it was last week or week before last, North County Fire Protection District's board voted to halt work on putting their station across the road here, and they're going to build it instead at the current location at the Palo Mesa Road site. I see the chief many times, and Robert actually met with him, I think today. I see him every Thursday at Rotary meetings, and the county is just stonewalling the project, and it's been pushed out into 5-7 years.
The fire project.
Well, the sheriff's substation, which we were gonna all say sheriff,
Right,
fire,
right.
water, but they own the land, and they're like, nah, we're not doing anything for at least 5 years, and probably 7. And if the county's telling you it'll be 5 to 7, it's gonna be longer than that. He says he can't wait, so they're pulling out. And for us, because we were, hoping that would be a great way to go and get the land use approval. Because for us, this whole only thing that makes sense for us is if we can get land use approval to sell this land to be able to do that. So now we're back to having to go on our own. And this is something that it was
Well,
just,
wait a second. So how big is the property that North County has?
oh, it's tiny.
It's tiny.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
on the corner there where their trailer is now. They're
Yeah.
gonna be wedged in there. They didn't want to do it there, but they're like, we got to build
They
a
don't have
station.
any room.
And they're in a mobile a trailer that's been there for 40 years.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
trailers 40 years, and so they've got to move forward. Keith was super energized to do this, Chief McReynolds.
Mhm.
And we met with the sheriff's, and I think Amanda has met with them, the county as well. Amanda, what was your experience in talking to the county about this project?
They haven't given us warm fuzzies.
No,
Well,
she's too polite.
let's just put it that way.
Yeah, they're essentially like, to leave us alone. We got the Vista Jail thing to worry about, the sheriffs. And there's also a concern that the supervisors, with the way the supervisors lean these days, if it's a police funding issue, then it becomes kick the can down the road. So essentially what that means is we're going to have to restart the process to do it alone, because because the whole goal has been to get entitled here. And when we had the opportunity and they looked like they were buying. And this time last year, we were having meetings with the sheriff's department. Well, it's probably in late April, early May, and they were getting ready to, oh no, it's actually right on this time.
Yep.
They're like, for sure. Yeah, we're going to have it. The board will approve it in June. And then later in the summer, we'll start talking about it. And we're like, cool, this is good. And then as the summer turned to fall and they go already silent, and then Keith going down there talking to Chief Meacham with CAL FIRE and all those guys. And we're like, what's going on? What's going on? And then they basically said, yeah, it got pushed to the side. That land's going to sit there and is owned by the county, but nothing happened to it for at least half a decade. But my guess is going to be closer to 10 years. And that would be, they're a lousy partner. Let's just put it that way. I don't know if anybody, the sheriff's listening in, but that's been a kind of a lousy experience.
You know, this, I mean, I know there was disappointment about that, but as you know, Tom, I have had
Reservations. also.
reservations is a mild word for jungling up. I have just seen, granted, it was up in the Bay Area, but I have seen what happens when multiple agencies try to jungle up on a project. It is crazy.
It
And
works if all three parties have the same interest,
Well-
but when one of them doesn't.
it also works if all three parties are accustomed to living in the world of capital project management. And two of these parties were not in this particular case. And so just getting heads around stuff is very hard. To me, I'm sorry about the delay, but I think that in the long run, we may find that this is a blessing in disguise. Because we can go our own road, the project becomes smaller, the path to entitlement becomes easier. And
Oh, I don't know about easier.
well, I think it's easier if for no other reason, we have time.
Yeah, well,
And-
we can.
And
yeah.
we should be
We have
using
control.
that time to work on and getting this project entitled.
Right.
So that when the market picks up,
Mhm.
we're not saying, oh, well, we can't do anything for another 2 years because we got to go get entitled. I think we should be using the trough as worker time to get all that
Yeah.
work done.
So that's what we'll be doing and coming forward in this year's budget. We'll make sure there's funds in there to start that work in earnest without other partners. I did get a call about a person out of Texas, some really rich guy who's looking to buy the land across 76 from us on the west side of Old 395, North 76 is zoned and planned for commercial and residential. And is interested in building that project. So
Where?
if you go across, across from Mobile on the other side of the freeway, go up that slope, there's that whole land out there is zoned already and approved for,
That steep slope?
well, it flattens out a little bit on the backside of it.
Okay.
So as you go along there, but yeah, there's going to be some grade involved.
I cause say that.
And
land looked
apparently the
beautiful.
person was inquiring about this land as well. I'm saying I'm all ears. I haven't got that phone call yet, and it's a developer calling. And I don't trust any of those guys as far as I can throw them. So I think that the best course of action is to, now that, because Keith said, yeah, we're thinking of pulling out. I'm like, well, come on, man, what are you doing? And then he finally in the last month just said, that's it, went to his board and they said, pull the plug. And they think that maybe in the future they could do a training center there, but he says, we're not waiting around because we just can't. They're in worse shape than we are at that station. So in the interim, I think that when, we're gonna recircle the wagons. We have Chris Brown with Alchemy Consulting, who does a lot of land use consulting for us as part of his contract. And then we also have the roadmap that Mastercraft did on here's all the things we need to do. We say, all right, Amanda, here's the laundry list. Let's put together the budgets. Let's figure out, because there's gonna be environmental work to do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We've done some of the preliminary environmental stuff, and then we got to start hashing out with the county on some of those alternatives that we looked at and start moving that process forward. So it's just the politics of land use approval in this county are weird because they don't like to do it. But if we could come in with this really great joint project, it seemed to me to have a better talking point that we were going to save the county money by being a partner on that project, because we're going to get funds from this and help offset some of their costs.
Yeah.
But that's unless we want to wait around a decade.
Is the Doolin property still on the market?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I mean,
Amanda can speak more to that, but yeah, we looked into that. Amanda, do you have your notes on the one down there at 395 in Doolin?
Yes, I actually followed up with Planning and Development Services, and there is a tentative map approved on that parcel. So it's no longer for sale, and it's looking like there's going to be some sort of housing development or something eventually coming in on that parcel.
And zoned residential also.
Yes.
But there, obviously site selection is going to be part of it. I have had discussions with Bonsall Unified School District. The superintendent is looking for a place for the high school. I said, he says, what do you think of our Gerd Road property? And I said, well, problem for us is that I don't want to do a land swap here. I need to turn this land into cash because we don't want to have to raise rates to build whatever facilities we need. So if you can come up with some cash, and I don't think the school district is
No,
going to be
I
able
don't
to.
think
Yeah.
Because this would be a great spot because they want to build a presence farther to the
East.
east because they've got new kids coming in from across the way.
This would be a cool high school spot.
Yeah, I mean, hell, the whole track could turn into a pool when it rains a lot. But
Well, I, for one, am just glad to hear that you're gonna populate the upcoming budget with money to proceed with at least entitlement work for this site so that we can
Right.
get closer and closer to making this viable while we search for a location.
and we've got a pretty good amount of work already ready to go.
Yes.
And one of the plans was to bring that whole package with this public safety center as a package, but that's now falling apart. So now we just got, all right, we got ourselves, into the 20% of the way we need to get. We're gonna have to do the rest of the way and then pitch it in a little different spin.
Is it presumptuous of me to ask that if we are planning on putting money into the budget for the coming fiscal year to do this work, know that we're going to need some consultant work to do that. Can we bet the come line and start putting together an RFP and start going through the process of consultant selection so that when the money becomes available, we have used the time between now and then
Oh, yeah.
profitably? Would that,
Yeah.
so we have a
definitely.
consultant ready to go on July 1st?
Yeah, like I said, the plug on this only got officially pulled at
Yeah,
the
I
last
understand.
North County Fire Board meeting,
Yeah.
which I don't know if it was last week or week before. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was a week before last. But it's now officially pulled.
Right.
And so that means, all right, regroup. And so Amanda has been deep into this thing, and then she'll pull out the Mastercraft report and figure out which boxes need to get checked, and we'll
Yeah.
start checking our way forward with bringing on board the people that we require to get them there. Helix did the preliminary environmental work, and they would probably be ones to do the next phase of it because they're familiar with it. We already have a contract with them.
And they got us extra land, so I like them.
Yeah, well, I mean, the county didn't approve that,
Right.
but
But
yeah, that's going to be the pitch.
I like
And then
their, I
it's
like their
after
mindset.
sitting down in earnest with the planning and development staff and saying, all right, get us going on this. So,
Right. I think adding to that, it helps that we have our decision from the sheriff and we're no longer in limbo. So we know our path forward. And so coordinating with planning and development services will definitely help us define our RFP when we bring a consultant on board. And especially somebody that's familiar with the land use planning in the county, in addition to having some sort of real estate expertise, will help guide us on our next steps going forward. So we'll put our heads together on consultant qualifications as well as flesh out some details on the scope of work. And hopefully we'll get a robust consultant team in that has familiarity specifically with this area, but also working with various aspects of the county to get some traction on this project.
yeah, and it's going to take a couple of years to get it done, with the way that the land use planning goes, but it's going to have to get done. That's something that will also be, I know that there was some questions asked by the recruiter looking for the next GM to like, hey, we finished the detachment thing. What are they going to work on? It's like, well, hey, you got this groundwater project. That's a big project. You got this project, because some people like to have something they can, do. They don't want to just come and, well, some people take GM's jobs just want to show up and rubber stamp things all day, and then retire 18 months after they get the gig. But we're looking for somebody who's going to want to grab these projects and run with them.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay. Item 16, meter update. Operations. This is on the thing, right?
The thing.
Losses.
Oh, the losses, yeah,
Yeah,
the water
yeah,
losses.
yeah.
So back in February, Tom reported back to the board about our water losses. They're right around 8%, a little bit more than what we imagined we were going to have, especially after the meter replacement project. Did a lot of work trying to track down why we had those water losses. Included bench testing meters, trying to find out what was going on. We found meters that were under registering, brand new meters. Worked with the manufacturer reps on what was going on. And essentially our meters, the way they are right now, they have the analog counters on them. And the gearing ratio, what was happening is some of our customers that use large volumes of water that probably should be on a 2-inch meter, but they have a 1-inch meter. We're basically disintegrating those gears in there. At that point, water was just going through there and we're not registering it. So we ordered what's called e-coders for these Neptune meters. It's a different style register. And we did some experimenting on the bench testing and they seem to hold up a lot better. We went through and identified 533 users that we need to change the meter heads on. We placed that order. We already have 30 of them working on installing those right now. The rest of them, they say will be here late summer, but just like these 30 just showed up and we're like, hey, I thought you said these weren't coming late. Well, we had some get freed up. So hopefully that'll be the case as we move forward where other districts, whoever's using e-coders cancels orders, whatever, and they can shift those orders over to us.
So are those, we're purchasing them to replace?
Yes. Purchase them to replace. And what the hook is that Neptune is saying that we are using those meters past their design capabilities.
Okay.
And my understanding, Meg, is that we're not purchasing entire meters.
No,
It's a
just
component.
the
It's a
register
component. Right.
portion of it.
Register, yeah.
Right. So the discussion with Neptune's ongoing in the sense that we want a favorable outcome and to this resolution because they don't want us to go to the point and say, well, our meter exchange was not successful. And this is why. In the industry, we all talk to each other about these issues, right? So they want us to have good relations with.
They don't want us
everybody else.
bad mouthing them out there in the industry. I get that. But I think the thing that's troubling to me is that I can understand how the problem occurred. I certainly understand that if Neptune has some stuff that they wrote and disclosed to us that they are claiming that we are beyond the usage parameters of their device, and so they do not believe they have any real responsibility for that problem, and we could probably strike some kind of a bargain. But what is troubling to me is that if we're not going to get the bulk of these 500 and something, which I assume are fairly high volume meters until the end of the summer, it means we're going to go through a summer with high volume water purchases where we are going to see a substantial amount of loss.
Correct.
That's my
right.
trouble,
Right
Meg.
now, that's a fair assessment. Now, we already got 30 that came in. The other thing we're doing with this
So
list.
we only have 512 more to go.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling real optimistic here.
So what we've also done with that list is we're inventorying the properties, meaning we're going to that property and saying, okay, why did they have a water loss? Like, why did they go negative on their usage? And some of them, and I have the spreadsheet here, they're taking notes and they're saying, well, they've chopped down their grove. Okay, well, that one's probably not going to be on our priority list, right? So our raw data was 533. But then when you go out and start investigating and find out, and some of them are legit, like, yeah, they're using water, the grove's fully functional or whatever going on. So we're trying to reprioritize those numbers on that list by going out and doing site visits. But
Well-
yeah, the lead time, 5 months.
Well, but on those meters where they're exceeding what you normally see on a 1-inch, are they to a point where they need to be recategorized?
So we had that discussion as well internally.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, the short answer is yes. The long answer is if we say they need a 2-inch meter, because that 2-inch meter could handle those flows,
Yeah.
who pays to upgrade that service from the water main to the meter? And then who pays for that monthly charge for that 2-inch meter? So the customer they pay X amount of dollars for having a 1-inch meter. Now their fee's going to go up to a 2-inch meter. And then who's covering the cost for the work to be done in the street to upsize that service? And then you have capacity charges. We have to figure that out. So they paid for capacity in the system for a 1-inch. And let's say that 1-inch is 30 years old. Now we're going to put a 2-inch. Where's the demarcation where we say, okay, you back owe the district X amount of dollars? It gets really dicey.
Yeah.
And you can't really just say, okay, we're going to put a 2-inch meter there, but you're still only feeding it with a 1-inch piece of copper. Because you're still not delivering the volume of water that they actually need.
Yeah.
So
Well, but they've only been getting that 1-inch pipes worth of water. So why don't you just put 2-inch meters in there just for the accuracy of them and
Yeah.
you
don't
could,
do anything else?
Yeah.
it's a complete replumb.
Yeah.
So, right, because the size of a 1-inch
Yep.
meter versus a 2-inch meter, going to be a complete repump. And now you're purchasing full 2-inch meters versus just the e-coders. So the e-coders gave us pretty good results in handling those high flows because it's electronic and not mechanical.
Yeah.
So that was going to be our first step. That's the least expensive and less time consuming because you're just going in there and changing out that register rather than digging everything up, replumbing, purchasing new 2-inch
You can
meters.
change it without removing the meter.
Correct.
And so Robert, what are we paying for those replacement units?
They are 350 a piece. Yeah, they're not.
That's just the module.
That's just the module. Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much is a 2-inch meter?
I don't know.
You're doing the math. It's gonna be in the thousands.
Times 500, how many?
37. Do we have enough data to have full confidence we're not gonna be doing this again in a year?
No.
This is it might work,
88,000.
looks pretty good, but you gotta put them in volume and let time go to see.
They're crunching the numbers over there.
And how does it work with, I mean, you're looking at the customers that have consistent high volume as compared to like, I mean, there might be some that just filled up a swimming pool. It was
We got it.
1 month and a big spike
Right.
or something.
No, this is consistent. This was over a year. So
Ah,
over 12 months.
okay,
Yeah, it was an average over 12 months.
all right.
Came up with some interesting numbers over there.
188,000.
Yeah.
Well, 187,950.
But then, so
Yeah.
then you,
Labor.
Inflation.
and you take that
as we
against,
speak.
we lost about $1 million last
Well, yeah,
fiscal
that
year.
exasperates the
Right.
the dollars, right?
So which back to Flint's point, we can't control Neptune in their inventory and their lead times on their inventory. But the plan was to get these things ordered as fast as we could to get them in before we continue to lose more money.
Right.
So the cost to replace them versus what we're losing, it's
We got to plug the hole in the dike.
right.
Yeah, because, you know, I guess there's great value intrinsically in having replaced all these meters. It's good. But between the hiccup we had with what the project really ended up costing when we did a full accounting of the project, plus the water loss that we experienced in the first year or X number of months because of this technical hiccup, and now the cost of having to replace those devices to the tune of 200,000, and we're going to get some more water loss because this is going to run through the high use season. I'm beginning to ask myself if this project ultimately is was an economically viable project. If you see what I'm saying, the cost benefit on this is beginning to
But
trouble
you
me.
couldn't have known
You
that
couldn't
up
have
front,
known,
right?
yeah,
You wouldn't-
right.
Agreed,
And you,
Right.
and you take
agreed, but
these,
it still is a concern.
so we exchanged 8,771 meters and we basically have a problem of a little over 500 meters, right? Out of that 8,700 meters roughly. So
6%.
it's not just the water loss for these high users, it's capturing the water loss across the whole district for every user, right? So All those other meters, we're not having issues with them.
Mhm.
Right? They work great. So there's other benefits that you get out of it. And we installed valves on the customer side where they didn't have valves. So now the customer can shut their own water off. We're not going out there to do that for them in emergencies. Something that is floating around the industry right now. So we do lead and copper sampling. So we sample for lead and copper in the water. We do that every 3 years. The EPA came out and they said, we want you to inventory all the water lines between the meter and the house for your district. This is across the United States. That's part of the lead and copper rule now. There's districts that are hiring private contractors to go dig those lines up to look at them. Because of our meter replacement project, we have pictures of all those pipes. Because we took pictures before and after as the meters were excavated before and when everything was exposed, we already have our inventory done.
Nice.
So there's these little things
I
that,
understand that, and I think that the meter replacement project was a very good one, but I think at some point it would probably be appropriate to take a look at what the true cost benefit on this project actually turns out to be, because my head is saying right now that I'm looking at somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million of problem that we did not anticipate, and that does not include the issue of how we budgeted and costed the project out to begin with. But the $1 million loss, the $200,000 for the meters, and another season of high loss. And, you know, when you add $2 million to the cost side of this project, I start to ask myself, I mean, we needed to do it, but I'm asking myself, how economically feasible was this project ultimately?
well, and something to consider if the original company, I don't even know, can I say their
ABM.
ABM? Imagine if we
Done.
had them under contract and we started getting the change orders from them.
Yeah, I think also when you look at ROIs, you got to look at what we use as rate escalators too. And I think we were conservative in the 5% range, but rates from the water authority have gone
Yeah.
up more than that. But
Yeah.
it is obviously disappointing that our customers have spun our meters out, but and I'm sure Robert reported that
Yep.
most of those
We
the
did.
high priority ones will be ready for irrigation season. We haven't lost any water in this last couple of months because nobody's used any. There's no water.
But we did lose a fair amount of water before that.
Oh, yes.
Last year.
Oh, yes.
And I
Yeah.
think to your point, Clint, I think once we get done with this grouping, we should circle back and say, okay, this is the total costs that we incurred for the replacement. Because this, when we exchange these e-coders, that's to me is still part of that project.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
once we're done, because I don't want to say we're guessing that this is going to solve the issue, but I think once they're replaced, it would get us a lot closer to that final number and say, okay, this is where we're at now.
But you have to factor in also the water loss into that
Correct.
as well.
The only,
Proceed.
the only way
Right.
you could get to a perfect, this is what we budgeted, this is what it costs, is if you were putting in a whole new system and you put in all new meters, okay? And everybody got laid out properly for the amount of water they consume. You know, when you go into these kind of projects, you're peeling an onion.
Yep.
You don't know
Right.
when you get to that second
Like
or
home
third
remodeling.
labor,
Yeah.
third
Well, we found
labor,
a lot of stuff out there.
how smelly it's gonna
Yeah.
get.
Right.
Okay, and it's just the nature of the beast. You don't have any control over that. You know, you just have to accept.
And it
what
kind of
comes.
parallels with
Yeah.
some of the stuff that Andrea was saying at our budget and finance committee at the board meeting.
Yeah.
But there's certain small percentage of our customers that just, even with small 1-inch meters, use an ungodly amount of water. That when we talked to the guys, we were on the voice video call with the guys in Alabama at the Neptune testing lab, and he's like, who can, they
Yeah.
just can't understand.
They
We're like,
couldn't comprehend that.
they do it. They're like, what do you think? 1,000 units a month? We're like, yeah. They're like, huh?
Yeah, they had to hook it up to a booster pump to try and simulate. the flow.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
Really?
it's so far outside with our
Wow.
pressures and,
Yeah.
and
Right.
the flows. It's just nobody manufactures this spec, and just so happened that those other meters did. And these
Yeah.
particular.
And you're right. It's like home remodeling, and I get that. I don't know. It just, I guess on the empathetic side of me, it just kind of takes a little bit of the luster off of
Oh,
what I was
totally.
feeling
Yeah.
Believe
about
me.
this
Yeah.
project.
It was a
And-
lot of
and-
teeth gnashing and pandering
Yeah,
on this building
but
over this thing. I think that the other aspect of it is that, and Robert and I sometimes have to recalibrate ourselves, that 20 years from now, people who are working here are gonna be happy we did it. You know,
Right.
the short-term pain we have here, yes, but the state of the installed meter infrastructure and the crazy redwood boxes and all the other stuff that we had out there was stuff that now our meter readers have a lot more free time. They're doing backflow testing, and so we don't have to hire. Can we add in that we don't have to pay for external backflow testers
Well,
anymore?
we just got I think it was cycle 1 check bills and there was only 55 of them. So we read the meters in cycles, there's 3 cycles. And check bills are basically discrepancies that came up when they went and read the meters. So basically those meters are sending signals and they read them off the laptop. And we got 55 back that was some issues. So you got to go manually read them. We used to get 200 on cycle 1. So you take that time, all the meter readers are going out.
It's a great
trying to
benefit.
Right.
It's a great benefit.
So like he said, we've reallocated their staff time to testing backflows now.
Yeah.
And a very successful program now. We're sending out notices where I think we're counted 1,600 already out of the 5,000. So that program's moving along. So the benefits of doing this exchange are just everywhere. Luckily, we caught it as part of the water loss. We figured out what the problem was. That's our job. We're moving forward. It's just unfortunate that the lead time is.
Yeah, so I guess just keep us updated on the
Did
progress.
somebody
of
say supply
getting these
chain?
puppies.
Okay, I just want to make sure that showed up.
What?
Somebody had to use the term supply chain as part of this
Yeah,
conversation. Sorry, I
yeah,
had to take
yeah.
that call.
Well, you have to recognize you're an end user. You're not a development lab.
Yeah.
Development lab, like at Boeing, we would have tested that coming in that for all these things because we got all this government money to do that junk. But you're not in the position to question the specifications of an existing producer like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they all have
You
the
have to
same
trust
specs.
that it's
There's
gonna work
AWA
and-
standards and they all meet the standard. Nobody
Yeah.
tests it like this.
Yeah, right.
Because nobody else in the country uses water like
We
some
do.
smaller percentage of our customers, but they're the big users.
6%. 6% of the customers.
6%. Okay, shall we move on? It's 5:00.
Yep.
As needed summary. I see that there's only one yellow line on this one. Is that right?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
And what is that? I can't read it.
Got it right.
Via Mariposa.
Staking of an easement. Okay. Okay. Any questions about the as needed summary? Okay, then we go to item 18, list of suggested agenda items for the next scheduled engineering and operations committee meeting. Our next meeting will be in early May. So I guess if you have something of interest on the groundwater, because I think Tom,
Yeah,
either
it'll
you
be-
or Amanda
right,
say,
yeah.
But I think,
We can leave it on there. We can give an update.
okay.
If we got it, we'll have it had it.
Yeah,
week,
yeah, but
so
I,
it won't have
I'm
a,
also empathetic though, that if you get it the morning of the meeting, it's kind of hard to present it because you guys haven't had a chance to
Haven't read it.
digest it, Yeah, so I get that. But
Is there
yeah, that
any
would be good.
More potential on LAFCO news about the separation,
yeah, we can definitely give an update.
if they have something coming in.
We're having later this month, another ad hoc committee. So I've heard the phone call I got, there'll be another version of the report coming out sometime in the next couple of weeks with some corrections, we hope. Exactly which corrections, I don't know, but,
Be careful what you ask for, Tom.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And so, but it is scheduled to go on the first Monday of June to the commission.
Alright.
So,
All right, so we'll hope maybe that there's something on the groundwater study and maybe information on meters, but the staff, of course, has the ability to, if you've got items going to the board and stuff,
Yeah,
you
well-
put them on and that'll be.
We're working on a couple different things with developers that this stuff started like in October of last year. That just keeps getting pushed because it's in the developer's hands. But we will have the environmental on-call as needed RFP. Those proposals are due tomorrow at 1:00 PM and also the CM and consultation proposals. So this committee will be invited to review those proposals if you all choose to. And then that'll come to the April, and with a recommendation of who to award to.
All right. So without further ado, unless there is an objection, QED, it's quit and eat dinner.
we need to.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.